Everybody, welcome back. These are the best horror films, the horror films that we loved of 1957. You're watching Yesteryear, and today, if you haven't already, click subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let's get into the horror films, the movies that we loved in horror of the year 1957. First up we have is 20 Million Miles to Earth. The first U.S. spaceship to Venus crash lands off the coast of Sicily. On its return trip, a dangerous lizard-like creature comes with it and quickly grows gigantic and menaces the entire town. Adventure, family, horror, and fantasy. 20 Million Miles to Earth. Next up we have is Attack of the Crab Monsters. Scientists become trapped on a shrinking island with intelligent, murderous giant crabs. The Attack of the Crab Monsters will not disappoint. Remember, now we're into the late 50s. A bunch of sea creatures are growing gigantic. The Black Scorpion. Notice the pattern here? Gigantic insects. Volcanic activity frees giant scorpions from the earth who wreak havoc in the rural countryside and eventually threaten New Mexico or Mexico City. The Black Scorpion is a horror sci-fi movie that will not disappoint. Check it out. Up next is The Aztec Mummy. The Aztec Mummy is a drama, horror, mystery. Experimenting in hypnotic regression to past lives, Dr. Almada discovers that his fiancée is the reincarnation of an Aztec maiden, who then goes on a killing spree. The Aztec Mummy. Next up we have is The Monster That Challenged the World. Horror, sci-fi, and thriller. Giant mollusk monsters attack California. So this is already now, you see the pattern. Bombs are detonated all over the US and the waters, causing sea creatures to become gigantic and kill people. The Haunted Strangler. Crime, mystery, and horror. A researcher investigating a notorious serial killer who was hanged 20 years earlier becomes possessed by the long-dead strangler. The Haunted Strangler will not disappoint. It is a crime, mystery, and horror. Up next is The Abominable Snowman. Who doesn't like The Abominable Snowman? Adventure and horror. A kindly English botanist and a gruff American scientist lead an expedition to the Himalayas in search of the legendary Yeti, or the Abominable Snowman. So you know he's going to be killing people. You know it. The Curse of Frankenstein. You can never go wrong with a Frankenstein movie. The Curse of Frankenstein. Horror, sci-fi, and thriller. While awaiting execution for murder, Baron Victor Frankenstein tells the story of a creature he built and brought to life. The Curse of Dr. Frankenstein. Believe it or not, that's how it was. The Giant Claw. Who cannot enjoy The Giant Claw? Fantasy, horror, and sci-fi. Global panic ensues when it is revealed that a mysterious UFO is actually a giant bird that flies at supersonic speed and has no regard for life. I saw this movie. It's spooky and scary. Next up is The Cyclops. That's another good movie. An expedition to Mexico finds and does battle with a mutated 25-foot man with one eye. Horror, sci-fi. The Cyclops. Who doesn't like The Cyclops? This movie was scary for its time, but it's quite good. Plan 9 from Outer Space. Many people have spoofed on this movie. It is a classic cult movie. Horror, sci-fi. Evil aliens attack Earth and set their terrible Plan 9 into action. As the aliens resurrect the dead of the Earth, the lives of the living are in danger. Plan 9 from Outer Space. Next up we have is The Land Unknown. Adventure, fantasy, and sci-fi. 3 men and a woman crash land in deep crater Antarctica, where they find a prehistoric world. The Land Unknown. What do you think about The Land Unknown? Check it out. Next up we have Spook Chasers. Comedy, crime, and horror featuring the legendary Huntz Hall from the Bowery Boys. The gang gets stuck during a thunderstorm in a spooky mansion where they run into ghosts, gorillas, and various apparitions. I have all the Bowery Boys. They're awesome. The Man Without a Body. A wealthy businessman discovers he has a brain tumor and seeks medical help. The businessman then finds a scientist experimenting with transplanting monkey heads on different monkey bodies. The Man Without a Body is a horror sci-fi movie. Next up we have is She-Devil. Crime, horror, and sci-fi. Dr. Scott and Bach inject the dying Kyra with a formula which saves her life, but also renders her almost immortal and wickedly evil. She-Devil. Crime, horror, and sci-fi. Another horror movie that we loved was Back from the Dead. Horror. A newly married young woman is possessed by the evil spirit of her husband's deceased first wife. Back from the Dead. This has a lot of kills, jump scares, suspense. Back from the Dead will not disappoint. Oh, this is a good one. Blood of Dracula. Under hypnosis, a young woman turns into a vampire. Blood of Dracula. This is 1957. Kind of low budget, but it's kind of campy. But Blood of Dracula, if you like Dracula and vampires, this movie will not disappoint. Catgirl. Horror. Leonora is a woman who returns to her ancestral home and is told she will inherit money, but also that there is a family curse. Catgirl. What could the curse be? You need to watch the movie and find out. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Cry of the Bewitched. Horror and thriller. Cuba, 1850. On a sugarcane plantation, the master and his wife are happy. They are expecting a child. Their slaves are quiet, but one night, as the full moon was rising, the sound of dread approached the little community. Cry the Bewitched. Curse of the Demon. Fantasy, horror, and mystery. American professor John arrives in London for a parapsychology conference, only to find himself investigating the mysterious actions of devil worshipper Julian. This is Curse of the Demon. Fantasy, horror, and mystery. Next up we have is Daughter of Dr. Jekyll. A young woman discovers she is the daughter of the infamous Dr. Jekyll and begins to believe that she may also have a split personality. Daughter of Dr. Jekyll. So this is kind of campy, fantasy, and horror, but it's a good movie. The Deadly Mantis. A giant prehistoric praying mantis recently freed from the Arctic ice voraciously preys on American military at the DEW line and works its way south. The Deadly Mantis. So this has a lot of kills and jump scares. Low budget, but it's a good movie. The Deadly Mantis. Next up we have is El Vampiro. Mystery, thriller, and horror. A pretty young Mexican girl returns to her hometown to make funeral arrangements for her beloved aunt, who has just died. Soon she begins to hear disturbing stories about the town being infested by vampires. The Vampire. From Hell It Came. Horror and sci-fi. A wrongfully accused South Seas prince is executed and returns as a walking tree stump. From Hell It Came. So this movie is about revenge and a lot of kills. So check out the kills from Hell It Came. I Was a Teenage Werewolf. A hypnotherapist uses a temperamental teenager as a guinea pig for a serum which transforms him into a vivacious werewolf. I believe this has John Landon. I Was a Teenage Werewolf. From Little House on the Prairie. Michael Landon, rather. Alright, Invasion of the Saucer Man. Aliens equipped with venomous claws invade a small town, but the town's teenage population is mobilized to fight the menace. Now this movie is cool, and it's fun, because teenagers beat up the aliens. Invasion of the Saucer Man. Check it out. Also, for 1957 was It Was Not in Vain. Crime, drama, and horror. Soon after coming to a small village, young doctor must fight against strong local superstitions. It Was Not in Vain is a good movie. Check it out. If you like mystery and suspense, this is a good movie. I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. Remember, I Was a Teenage Werewolf. I Was a Teenage Frankenstein. Professor Frankenstein creates a hulking teenager from the body of an accident victim. His creation awakens and goes on a killing spree. I was a teenage Frankenstein. What could go wrong by gathering dead parts and making a living dead? Legend of the Lost. Adventure, drama, and horror. American ne'er-do-well Joe January is hired to take Paul Bernard on an expedition into the desert in search of a treasure. Legend of the Lost. This is drama, adventure, and horror with Sophia Loren. Also we have is Lay Girls, Less Girls, Lay Girls. Comedy and musical and horror. The former members of a dance troupe are suing because of recently published memoirs. Each one insists on one point of view. Lay Girls will not disappoint. Next up we have is Lust of the Vampire. Original title, I Vampiri. Paris, young girls are found dead, drained from their blood. Who could be killing all the young girls in Paris? Lust of the Vampire. If you like horror films and Draculas, Lust of the Vampire will not disappoint. Not of This Earth. An alien agent from the distant planet Davana is sent to Earth via a high-tech matter transporter. There, he terrorizes Southern California in an attempt to acquire blood for his dying race. Not of This Earth is a very creepy movie. Next up we have is Pharaoh's Curse. Horror. A crazed Egyptian follows the members of an archaeology expedition and kills them off one by one while getting progressively older. The Pharaoh's Curse. So while he's killing people, he's getting older and dying. The Night the World Exploded. Sci-fi and horror. Dr. Conway has perfected a machine which he believes will predict earthquakes and has determined that one will strike California within 24 hours. Will the public heed his warnings? How many people will die? The Night the World Exploded. Quatermass 2. Sci-fi horror. Professor Quatermass, trying to gather support for his lunar colonization project, is intrigued by mysterious traces that have been showing up. Quatermass 2. Sci-fi and horror. Next up we have is Swamp of the Lost Souls. Drama, horror, and mystery. A disappearing body leads a detective and his sidekick into an encounter with a gill man. Swamp of Lost Souls. Drama, horror, and mystery. If you like jump scares and mystery, check out Swamp of the Lost Souls. The Body Snatcher. Original title, Ladrón de las Cadáveres. Horror, sci-fi, and thriller. A wrestler and a detective team up to stop a mad scientist who is kidnapping athletes and replacing their brains with those of animals to make them stronger and live longer. The Body Snatcher. Next up we have is The Giant Claw. Global panic ensues when it is revealed that a mysterious UFO is actually a giant bird that flies at supersonic speed, killing people, destroying everything in its path. The Giant Claw. Fantasy, horror, and sci-fi. I may have covered this earlier, but here it is again. The Curse of the Aztec Mummy. The evil Dr. Krupp, once again trying to get possession of the Aztec princess, hypnotizes her current reincarnation. The Curse of the Aztec Mummy. If you like mummies and they're walking and killing people, The Curse of the Aztec Mummy will not disappoint. The Man Who Turned to Stone. Horror and sci-fi. Jory and his followers stay immortal by siphoning off the life forces of others. If they don't get renewed, they petrify. Can you imagine that? The Man Who Turned to Stone. If he doesn't kill people and suck their blood, he'll turn to stone. The Monolith Monsters. Drama, horror, and sci-fi. Rocks from a meteor which grow when in contact with water threaten a sleepy southwestern desert community. The Monolith Monsters. This is kind of creepy, but it's a drama, horror, and sci-fi. Next up we have is The Spirit of St. Louis. Adventure, biography, drama, and horror. Charles Lindbergh struggles to finance and design an airplane that will make his New York to Paris flight the first solo transatlantic crossing. Suspense, horror, and drama. Because does he make the flight? Does he crash and burn? The Unknown Terror. horror and sci-fi. A millionaire leads an expedition into a remote jungle to find his wife's long-lost brother. The unknown terror. What ensues? You'll have to find out when you watch the movie. But there's some kills, some jump scares. Next up we have is The Vampire. Horror, sci-fi, and thriller. A kind, small-town doctor mistakenly ingests pills made from the vampire bat blood, and they turn him into a dangerous fanged creature. The Vampire. So this is a horror, sci-fi, and thriller. Next up we have is The Astounding She-Monster. Crime, horror, and sci-fi. A gang of crooks has kidnapped a rich heiress, come up against a beautiful but lethal alien who has crash-landed a spaceship on Earth. The Astounding She-Monster. So the crooks are going to face the alien and someone's going to die. The Brain from Planet Arus. Action, adventure, and horror. An evil alien brain from the planet Arus hijacks the body of an Earth scientist in order to control the Earth. The Brain from Planet Arus. Next up we have is The Undead, fantasy and horror. A beautiful woman is sent back in time via hypnosis to the Middle Ages, where she finds she is suspected of being a witch and subject to being executed. So she's being hypnotized, going back in time, and now she has to escape being killed because they think she's a witch. The Unearthly, sci-fi and horror. Mad Doctor uses patients at his isolated psychiatric institute as subjects in his attempts to create longevity by surgically installing an artificial gland into their skulls. The Unearthly, sci-fi and horror. Next up we have is Voodoo Island, horror. A scholarly type is asked to investigate the possible island site for a large resort hotel, an island rumored to be infested with zombies. Voodoo Island will not disappoint. Check out Voodoo Island. Next up we have is Voodoo Woman. Horror and sci-fi. Deep in the jungles, a mad scientist is using the natives' voodoo for his experiments to create an indestructible being to serve his will. Voodoo Woman. So, if you like horror, sci-fi, and voodoo, check out Voodoo Woman. Zombies of Mora Tau. Action, adventure, fantasy, and horror. Zombie-like dead crewmen of a sunken ship have always prevented salvagers from claiming the wreck's legendary box of diamonds. But will a new group of treasure hunters succeed? That you'll have to stay tuned by watching the movie. Those are the horror movies that we loved of 1957. Were there any movies that I left out from 1957 that you remember that scared you? Out of these movies, do you remember any of these that scared you, or remember these growing up as a kid? I remember The Curse of Frankenstein. I Was a Teenage Werewolf with Michael Landon. If you don't know who Michael Landon was, famous actor on Bonanza, Little House on the Prairie, did tons of movies, TV shows, Highway to Earth, I think, Highway to Heaven. So Michael Landon did I Was a Teenage Werewolf. But you see a lot of teenage movies now with aliens, and the theme is these creatures are gigantic and they basically want to kill humankind or mankind. Alright, those are the horror movies that we loved in 1957. I'm Tony. Thank you for watching Yesteryear today. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, leave them below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.